City Talks with Reuben Abati.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of your number one talk show, City Talks with Reuben Abati, on your number one lifestyle station, City 1051 FM. On this show, we talk about stories of political and human interest that affect us as citizens of Nigeria and as members of the global human community. Today, we will be discussing Chibok Girls, 7 years after, and the way forward. And to guide us through this, we have a special guest, Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, a social development consultant, a researcher, and a public speaker. Dr. Nwaneri holds a BSc in Economics from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, 1998, an MA in Public Policy from the George Washington University, Washington, D.C. in the United States, and a PhD in Social and Political Philosophy from Loyola University in Chicago, United States. She sits on the executive board of the International Development Ethics Association, IDEA. She has worked and studied in the Americas, Europe, and Africa, and has conducted research and taught courses in public policy, ethics, philosophy, international development, as well as business and military ethics at the university level. Her current research interests includes the relationship between global existential threats like pandemics and the global justice system and equity. Her words, I quote her, "Whether at the individual, social, or global level, I consider all forms of injustice as crises that should be addressed urgently. I also believe that the greatest tool persons have to combat injustice is their ability to think. Thus, my strongest passions are intellectual pursuits and social justice." Dr. Nwaneri, if you want to be part of this conversation, you can call us on 0700 1051 1051 or leave comments on WhatsApp 090-991-64403 and on social media accounts at City1051 on Zoom, Twitter, and Facebook. Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, thank you very much for joining us. You're welcome to City Talks with Reuben Abati.
It's such an honor to have been invited in the first place. It's really great to have you. I finally get to meet you virtually. I'm a big fan by this. So it is a privilege on a lot of levels. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And I thank the audience for being a part of this.
Thank you very much. Well, Dr. Nwaneri, it's been 2,549 days since 276 girls were abducted from the government girls' secondary school in Chibok. Since then, so much has happened. We've had other cases of abductions. In the last 5 months alone, over 600 students have been abducted from schools in the northwestern part of Nigeria. Governor Samuel Otom of Benue State was just saying 2 days ago that, in fact, 10,000 Nigerian boys and girls are still even in Boko Haram custody since the original incident of 2014. Will you say whether or not Nigerians or Nigeria, the Nigerian government, has learned any lessons since that incident in Chibok on April 14, 2014?
So I don't know what's the appropriate way to refer to you. Should I call you Mr. Abati or
anyone? Anyone.
So one of the things that journalists do when they invite you to things like this is they ask you a set-up question. I mean, a cursory glance can show that we're just not, we haven't handled it well. But you see, at the same time, as soon as Chibok happened, right, the first thing there's something we say in philosophy. So my training is in philosophy. There's a saying in philosophy that says ought implies can. If I say, call Ndidi for me, it implies so many things. It implies that you understand my language. It implies you know who Ndidi is. It implies that you know how to call somebody, right? Sorry, I'm an academic, really going into nitty-gritty. But when something happens and you say someone should do something, it implies that the person can do it. Now, the person cannot do it. What's the point of telling them that they should have done it? So ought, if I say you ought to do something, it implies that you can do that thing. So as soon as this happened, cynics like us were like, those girls are gone. We just lack. So we might have the technical capabilities, right? So I don't want to impinge on anybody's profession. We have good officers. But you see, our mix in Nigeria makes it, just shows from the track record that we just don't have the capacity, a certain kind of capacity. It is not the capacity of shooting a terrorist. It is not the capacity of even knowing where to find them, but as a coordinated entity, there's a capacity we lack. And that is what has showed up in the last 7 years. So I'm going to back down there.
Okay, but is it any comfort, if I may use that word, that the federal government of Nigeria has issued a statement to say that the Chibok girls have not been forgotten? 112 of them are still in captivity, but the federal government says they've not been forgotten and that the government is still doing whatever it can to rescue the remaining 112 girls. Should that be taken as words of comfort?
People like me will find such a statement extremely upsetting, right? Because that statement does not take into account the incompetence that has been displayed in the last 7 years. It's a very upsetting statement. It sounds like the kind of trite statements that come out of government offices. And it's a very insensitive statement. What do you mean you have not forgotten? What does that even mean? How am I supposed to respond to that? What is the action point of that? The government, well, you haven't forgotten, neither has Ndidi forgotten. Big deal. So I feel that such statements are insensitive. And I don't know if you've noticed. Okay, so remember there was a rescue of people at, there's been quite a few rescues. The first one that was done, 300 or so women and children were rescued. And everybody's like, no, they're not the Chibok girls, there's someone else. So I want to go back to the nitty-gritty. I want to go back to the foundation. How did Sambisa become a place where terrorists could hide? What happened? What happened was that the Babangida administration decided that they were going to use Sambisa Forest, which was a game reserve, and turn it into a training camp for special forces. They set the place up. There was so much backlash from society. I'm old enough to remember the project was abandoned, but military structures had been built there. When I say abandoned, I mean abandoned. Now, a game reserve was not funded properly. It became all the poachers run off with all of the animals. The government, the military dictatorship decides that they want to set up a camp to train special forces. There's backlash and everybody just walks away in an irresponsible manner. So we had a barrack that was not controlled, a space that was not controlled, taken over by people until today. We're still suffering from it. So remember when we had a conversation, we're talking about policy. We really need to go back to the drawing board. And I'm sorry, back to your question. The statement that the government has not forgotten is a very upsetting statement because it doesn't have any content.
Dr. Nwaneri, in 2014, after the abduction of the Chibok girls, one of the fallouts was that the government of the day set up what they called Safe Schools Initiative. And the whole idea was to make our schools safe for Nigerian students. At that time, this was done in collaboration with the UN Global Special Envoy for Global Education, Mr. Gordon Brown, who visited Nigeria. The Buhari administration also inherited that Safe School initiative. But how come 7 years later, our schools remain unsafe, either in terms of physical security or in terms of the enabling environment for studies?
I'm going to be brutally honest. And so I'm going to be brutally honest. So it is not, okay, so everybody, knee-jerk reaction, everybody's freaking out. Oh, they've abducted children. all sorts of policy activities wake up over a 5-minute period. We all forget that we have a very bad policy environment where things don't get done. I'm not going to talk about electricity. I'm not going to talk about the roads. I'm not going to talk about our inability or our refusal to educate our children. So at the policy level, we are an incompetent society. Put that aside. There's another feature we have. Money tends to disappear. If a snake is not swallowing it, something is happening to it. That is our society. That is how we function. As the street talk, that is how we roll. Now, $30 million was raised, right? And so we have $30 million. The snake that ate our oil money for the last how many years, we hadn't addressed it. We bring $30 million. Of course, there are vultures waiting to gobble it up. Not one school has been rehabilitated, not one. In fact, recently, the governor of Borno State went to visit the schools that they were supposed to have rebuilt. He was so upset, he's there rebuilding it himself. Now, where I'm going with all of this is that the money was raised, and the Nigerian society being what it was, despite the fact that there were children still missing, the money disappeared, right? So I feel that, remember where I started from, ought implies can. What are we capable of doing and what are we not capable of doing? Any thread you pull in the Nigerian society is going to take us all the way back, not to the government, not to the administration, but to the people. A government that, so the Chibok Girls disappeared, right? How many security agencies were implicated by that? One of the questions I asked, which is the irritating question social policy people ask, when this happened, I said, wait, who are the local government chairmen of the space called Sambisa Forest? Historically, who has managed that space? How has it been managed such that all of a sudden we are shamelessly telling the world that there is a space within Nigeria that the government, the state, the people are not in charge of? How many Sambisa forests exist in Nigeria? How many game reserves do we have? How are we managing it? You see, there's another thing that this leads to. I'd like to tell Nigerians in general, right? No matter how intellectually lazy you are, at the end of the day, modern society is complex. And you have to take responsibility for the complexity of your modern society. Or else, you're going to end up trying to rescue 112 girls. You're going to find 300 people that are completely unaccounted for. What does that say for our society? So when we say, oh, count people, they ask us that why are we saying they should count people? After all, they don't chop. They never chop. You say make them count them. That is the discourse we have in Nigeria. And it's utter irresponsibility, because if you have girls missing, how do you even know you found the right girl? How do you know that you did not rescue somebody who is going to blow up the refugee camp? Well, you can't even identify people. I can become Fatima tomorrow. All I have to do is wear a veil. So we have to take ourselves seriously as a society. What you're seeing is a situation that we have a situation that dropped into dysfunction. And my thesis is, until we address the dysfunction, if you like, bring 300 billion to rehabilitate school. I once worked in education policy. Guess what money disappeared? Somebody decided that, oh, the girl child is not going to school because of lack of sanitary facilities. So you have a 12-year-old, how is she going to use the restroom if she has to go to school? So because of that, some parents were like, no, my child is not about to yank her skirt up at the age of 12. That's how rape happens. So the country now decided that, okay, we're going to put in pit latrines in every single toilet because that's what we can afford. That money disappeared. So until we take ourselves seriously as a people, 30 million, 500 billion is going to go down the same road. So no, the buildings have not been, no, schools were not rehabilitated. And I'm sorry, I know I'm going on and on. I'd like to ask you a question, Mr. Abati. Please, when you have an unsafe community, I also come from a rural community. And rural communities, it doesn't matter where they are, you find that it's not very developed. You don't have a lot of structures around them, right? What is the logic behind bringing 30 million to make a few schools safe? Even that policy in itself, maybe there's something I don't know. But what are you going to do to a school? You're going to put perimeter fencing, you're going to put barbed wires. I can cut a barbed wire. I mean, I'll just clip, right? And open it and saunter into the school. So, as far as
I'm not too sure it's that simple.
You know, the whole thing is a barbed wire fence. You can cut it if you have the right gadgets.
Really?
Did you go to secondary school in Nigeria?
We weren't cutting barbed wires in my own secondary school. But let me ask you another question. Now, when the Chibok Girls incident occurred on April 14, 2014, there was a lot of outrage. And it was that outrage that led to the formation, the establishment of the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls movement. It became a movement. There was even, it was even bought into by the international community. But since the Chibok Girls, we've had the Dapchi Girls, Government Science Secondary School in Dapchi. Leah Sharibu is still in custody for refusing to renounce her faith. There have been other incidents in Jangebe, in Zamfara State, in Kankara, in Katsina, in Kangara, in Niger State, in Afaka, in Kaduna State. Now, apart from the incident in Chibok, other abductions, school abductions, would seem not to have attracted the same kind of outrage, either locally or internationally. Is it that the people are exhausted because of the frequency of these abductions?
I'm going to put this back on the Nigerian society. You know, everybody has a line. There's certain things the government will do and the country will say. We think in Nigeria that there's nothing the government can do and we'll turn it down. There are a lot of things that will happen and we will refuse. I think the challenge here for me is that the line is drawn too low. Now, you might think that there's certain things I will do even on this call and you will shut it down and tell everybody, sorry, we're not doing it again. As we say in Nigeria, but our line is so low that it's really problematic. First of all, you have to notice that, so for you to control media, you have to be educated, right? You're probably literate, you're probably part of the elites, right? Now, that probably means that your children are not running around in some rural school. No. So there's a class issue. We don't talk about it in Nigeria. There's this thing about, well, I'm sitting down in Lekki or I'm in GRA, Benin. What is my own? They have to get past a lot of rural areas before they get to me. By which time I would have hopped into a plane and gone somewhere else with my children. So there's this jadedness, there's a background of jadedness already. Then on top of it, particularly when the people in the metropolis who control the media and they control attention, I do development work. I do a lot of development consulting. And the difference between when you're doing consulting in Abuja and Lagos and when you're doing it in a non-Abuja and Lagos state, when you're doing it in a southern state and when you're doing it in a northern state, you immediately, what becomes glaring to you is how we're actually running. It's almost as if we're running two different societies in terms of orientation. So, girls are abducted, right? It becomes a cash crop. We have reached a point where the abductees now recognize that the state is either cannot or refuses to address this issue. Because you see, there are certain things that in a society, social policy teaches that the complexity of the society means that you cannot reform one dimension of the society piecemeal. You're just buying time. So let me give you an example. If you reform taxation, right, without reforming the legal system, a dysfunctional legal system is going to mess up your taxation reform. If you reform education without reforming the legal system, a dysfunctional legal system, and vice versa, it works that way. So we have reached a point where we recognize the incompetence of people like you and me, the ruling elites of Nigeria, on the one hand. Second, the body that is referred to as the government.
I'm not one of you people. I'm just a journalist.
We form the
I'm just a journalist. I'm not one of you people.
A society that has a literacy rate of 34%, anybody with a college degree has crossed the line. So sorry. Now, when I say elite, I don't mean in terms of property. I don't mean in terms of money or cash. I mean, dude, you're Reuben Abati. You want to deny being part of the ruling class? Let's not go there. Don't even start. But no, seriously, jokes apart. When you arrange Nigeria in terms of demographics, another thing Nigerians don't recognize is that the people that board planes in Nigeria are so few. We can't even maintain an aviation industry. But don't get me started. But the crop of people which are bellyful for Nigeria that can have 3 square meals a day without thinking about it is a very, very small crop. So anyway, back to what I was saying. At the end of the day, we have betrayed the country. We're incapable of asking the questions, or we refuse to ask those questions. And part of the reason, as I told you, everything is connected. Part of the reason why the elites in Nigeria refuse to ask any questions is because everybody lives on government patronage. That's what we live on. There's no viable private sector. Somebody just wrote on the chat that even the startups are going to Ghana and other countries because we don't have a viable private sector. Now, if all your money is coming from government and public sector related issues, you'll be very careful how you open your mouth and talk. Besides which, there's also the Black African thing of refusing to take up society or take on society. And as they say in Yoruba, sorry, I'm Igbo, but I speak a lot of Yoruba, and I go into Nigerian languages when the thing catch me for throat. I don't know if that has translation, but let me translate it to Pidgin English. Nine side with this, so this thing of pretending that we can hide our heads in the sand and society will fix itself. I'm sure everybody realizes now that we're all in trouble. But let's not digress.
Well, quickly, let me ask you, how do we calculate this in terms of cost, particularly impact on the education sector? As you speak, over 600 schools have been shut down in Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, Zamfara, and Niger states within the last 3-4 months as a result of school abductions. Now, I mean, what's the long-term effect? And we've seen many of the students saying, they would rather not go back to school. Parents are also very anxious. How do we calculate this in terms of long-term effect on the development of Nigerian youths?
I'm glad you brought this. This is good. I'm going to answer this question I'm glad you brought this up. I'm going to answer this question in 3 dimensions. The first one is that already our educational system was on crutches. When I was a child growing up in Lagos, the people that couldn't go to school, the lower income people that I grew up with, they came out of elementary school literate, right? And that is why my generation of area boys, you'll be shocked, they can read and write. But right now we have people that are coming out of school and they can't read and write. Our educational system is utterly dysfunctional, and I'm going to stop there. The second thing is that the girl child education problem, we have not addressed it because there's this need. The need for abuse. Abuse is very addictive, right? So you find a lot of people are abusive, or there's the opportunity to sleep with very young girls that are poor. So there's a vested interest in not sorting it out. And lest you think I'm bashing the male gender, don't forget that the crop of house girls that we can employ 4 at a blow, it comes from this crop of uneducated people. So what's the vested interest among the people that can access cheap labor? The people that are running the show, so to speak, there's no vested interest to improve education. Now, if I was in a rural area and I had the option of sending my child to get married and produce grandchildren for me, I would rather not educate my girl child if the risk is abduction. Then the last thing I'm going to say about that before I go directly into your question is that we're so jaded, we forget that every single child, if you say 1,200 children, 1,200 not parents, 1,200 friends, 1,200 communities, people are getting severely damaged. This is scarring families. And you know what we're going to pay the price? In another 20 years, because the children that are getting traumatized by watching their mothers, sisters disappear, it goes into family law. That damage. And you know, nobody goes to do therapy because in Nigeria, we claim that if you go for therapy, you're a mad person. And you know, madness is stigmatized. So we have damaged, psychologically damaged people being raised. Now, with regards to the educational system in Nigeria, already, you know, the tragedy is that a river never stays in one place. A river is always flowing. So if you're not growing, you are regressing. Banditry multiplied by a bad educational system. If you multiply it, we're into a downward spiral. Because if the few people that are supposed to get educated don't get educated, it's going to be problematic. Now, there's another thing I'd like to say to the public. Education, when we talk about education, is not about speaking phonel. It is about, you see all those children you see in the videos, the little girls that tell you that, oh, they're reluctant to go to school. How are they going to read, even if they do get married without an education, how are they going to read medicine bottle for their children? How are they going to know that their children's teacher knows what he or she is teaching them? So when we talk about education, it's not because we want to turn everybody into a banker or a lawyer. In modernity, where 2 bottles of medicine, one can be poison if you give it to anybody that is less than 12, and one can worsen the situation, all you have to do is read the label. The difference between 4 tablets and 2 tablets, that is what you're depriving these children of. So the wahala inside this thing, we haven't even scratched the surface, because now we're digging ourselves deeper and deeper into a rut. By the time these children we have damaged become adults, I hope you can tell the difference between a Boko Haram member and a regular member of society. I hope we'll be able to make that distinction.
Well, Dr. Nwaneri, I would ask 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll take a short break so that our listeners can join us in the conversation. And my next question is this. What are the best steps that you think government can take, particularly at the state level? If you look at the papers today, parents of the students who were abducted from School of Forestry Mechanization, FACA, in Kaduna State, they are appealing to civil society groups, NGOs, and concerned citizens to come to their rescue, because the abductors are now threatening to kill the 29 remaining students of School of Forestry Mechanization who are still in captivity if they do not get the ransom of 300 million that they have asked for. They released 10 of the students earlier this month when they got 17 million. And yet the governor of Kaduna State is saying that it has not appointed anyone to pay ransom on its behalf or to negotiate with bandits, and that it will not pay any ransom. And that anybody that puts himself or herself out as negotiating on behalf of government will be arrested and prosecuted. And here you have the parents in total deep anguish saying that please, people should come to their rescue. They are ready to pay ransom. Now, how do we find a way out of this? What other steps do you think can be taken?
Balancing this, I think it's rather unfortunate that the governor of Kaduna State made that statement. The only thing that entitles him to make that statement is if he has not in the past negotiated with people who broke the law or who killed people or abducted people in Kaduna State. Now we have it on record that he has negotiated in the past. That's 1. 2, as an African woman, the first question I'm going to ask is, you're picking Dede. That's the second question I'm going to ask. Now, he could also say back to me, well, it's not a personal thing. I'm the governor of the entire state, and he'll be entirely justified in saying that. Now, where did 17 million come from? And you know, let me just bracket this. Isn't it telling me, Ndidi, this is the first time I'm hearing about these details. We're so jaded that, oh yeah, they abducted people. Okay, what are we having for dinner? Like, we move on immediately. We're not even thinking about it, right? So, first of all, they paid 17 million. Is the governor really saying to me that if he finds the people that paid that 17 million, he's going to prosecute them and arrest them? That's number one. And then, please, what is his plan? If you tell me that my plan is not good enough, that will mean that you've given me a superior argument. You've said to me, okay, guys, this is how we're going to manage it, and you have to be obedient to me because I have the, what is it called? The right to force, right? I'm the commander of the armed forces in the state. So this is my plan, this is my agenda, but make sure you don't tell anybody. You do not tell me not to do what I can when you are not, you're not giving me an agenda, you're not telling me what you're doing. And this applies to every single governor, or even any person in authority. If you say to me, Ndidi Nisuru means that you have a plan, Abi. So what is the plan? So that's my question. What is the plan? What is he planning on doing? Like, what is he going to do? This threat of force, this refusal, this leadership style that we have in Nigeria, and it's not just him. We have a leadership style in Nigeria, even in the private sector, that borrows a lot from the military, right? When people say, oh, we've been under military rule for so long, people think that it's just a bunch of words. It means that military style attitudes have seeped into the way we think. Therefore, a leader will say to his community, sit down and keep quiet, I'm coming. When you're asking that, Oga, what's the plan? My friend, I said you should keep quiet. It is something that has seeped into us, where we feel that imagine 39 children have been abducted, and the governor does not feel a need to appease, to appeal, to do them, as we say, pele. No, he's saying that if you move, I arrest you. Where's the logic? So, well, I suppose if that one is a question, I don't have answer. I don't know.
Anyway, on that note, we would need to take a short commercial break. Remember, if you want to be part of this conversation, you can call us on 070010511051 and on WhatsApp 09099164403 and on social media accounts at City1051 on Zoom, Twitter, and Facebook. We take that short break. Our guest is still Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, PhD, Social Development Public Policy Consultant, teacher, and academic. We'll be right back.
City Talks with Reuben Abati.
Back to City Talks with Reuben Abati here on your number one lifestyle station, City 1051 FM. And if you are just joining us, our guest is Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, Social Development and Public Policy Consultant, academic and researcher, and also a public speaker. And we've been looking at Chibok Girls 7 years after. It was exactly 7 years on April 14, 2021, that the Chibok Girls, 276 of them, were abducted from the government secondary school Chibok in Borno State. And 112 of them are still in captivity. What is the way forward? What do we need to do to make our schools safe? Why is it that school abductions have become a recurring decimal within the Nigerian space? And what is the cause? What is the impact? Are the governors helpless? Can the federal government, solve the problem of what we're dealing with? Is a question of nonchalance or incompetence. And why is it? Why does it look like Nigerians are exhausted, fatigued, when they hear about school abductions? Is it that we have accepted kidnappings, either in schools or elsewhere, as part of the reality that we have to live with? If you want to be part of this conversation, our guest is here. And the number to call us on is 070010511051. Dr. Nwaneri, I already have a question here for you, sent by Yemi Adeogun from the United Kingdom. Yemi Adeogun says, based on how Nigeria is at the moment, is it not reasonable to just peacefully divide the country and let each section of the country manage according to its own moral, cultural, and economic values? Do you think that that's the solution? Because there are many Nigerians who are already suggesting that, let each person just go his own way because...
So I've never I've never had a platform to say this, and I'm going to say this, and this is my position. I don't care. I don't care where you come from. I don't care what part of the society you come from. The corruption, irresponsibility, and bad behavior that Nigerians exhibit is universal. It involves every single local government area. It involves every community. This is a society that lacks the capacity to give us credible census figures. This is a society that lacks the capacity to educate itself. I don't see too many people that have stuck their necks out for the society. What we have are people who make up all sorts of stories, and their success is not hinged on the knowledge of the people. It is hinged on the ignorance within which they function. So let me get this straight. You slice yourself off. Are you a homogeneous community? Is whatever chunk you decide to slice off, are you homogeneous? Are you identical? Who is going to have power? The bad behavior you have learned, what are you going to have? You're going to have in where people are building mega cities and they're begging foreigners to come. You want to build, what do you want to build? A society based on ethnic groups. And if you're going to build a society based on ethnic groups, what ethnicity are you going to pick? My mother and my father are from two different states. So how are you going to pull that off? This thing is not well thought out. It is a refusal to take responsibility. And to take responsibility does not mean that you blame yourself. It means that, let me give you an example. If I enter Mr. John's house and Mr. John's compound is dirty and I decide to take responsibility of cleaning it, that doesn't mean that I made the place dirty. Taking responsibility is a sign of adulthood, is a sign of maturity. So the people that are saying that, oh, their solution is going to be dividing the country, they should knock themselves out. God give us life. Let me see how they're going to fare. If they want to do it, they should do it. It's democracy, it's freedom. But sitting, and then another thing that bothers me is exactly what certain people did. Before I start naming names down, they will say that I'm unpatriotic. Where do you get off sitting in a foreign country, giving your children a plan B and yourself a plan C, D, and E, and then making utterances on social media that Nigerians should divide themselves? Maybe you want to come back, give up your foreign citizenship, sit here and do the ruffle with us, cut the country, but do it while you're here. Do not, I don't take such people seriously, I'm sorry. I don't take them seriously. With due respect to you, sir, I have a problem with your position. Come back and separate the country. Come back, struggle, get into the Senate and clean up the Senate. And then have the Senate vote to split the country. I don't care if it's in 1,000 pieces, so long as you have the agreement of everybody else. But saying that in social media, instigating kids that don't even have passports, I'm sorry. There's something about that is hovering around the area of irresponsibility. You do not do that. A lot of people have done that. A lot of people make such utterances. And I do not think it is fair on Nigerians. It is not every Nigerian that can. I travel all the time. But is it every Nigerian that will go to Canada when we rock the boat? So yes, you can, that is an idea, you can table it, but the way you table it also matters. And if the thing catch your body, you'll try enter plane, come back. Can't divide the country. When you divide and finish, if you go back. That's my position.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Yemi Adeogun heard you loud and clear. Well, do we have any callers on the line? Well, we're still having this conversation with Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, Chibok Girls, 7 years after. We have a caller there, yes. Your name, your location, and please keep it short and simple.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Hello.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yes, your name and location, and then please keep it short and simple.
Okay, my name is Bayo. I'm calling from my Opik side now. Okay. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, the Chibok case, is a very sad, it's a very sad situation and it's a very sad memory. First of all, to me, it's obvious that, there is no political will, from the side of our leaders or government, so to say, to actually get these remaining girls rescue. 7 years is quite bad. I mean, a child that was born at that point in time, I think he or she now should be, in the middle elementary class. If not, I mean, I'm trying to even go to what's called basic now. Do you get? So, I mean, 7 years is quite a lot of years. I mean, for any, willing and determined, government or institution, to get this, fine. Even if at all you cannot go by the way of force, there should be negotiation. And what are you negotiating? Or, in all this war, even if it means you, I mean, pay all heaven and heart to get, we are talking about lives here. We are talking about lives which cannot claim, which are priceless. We found out that, I mean, about not less than 20, I mean, of these parents of these victims, they have died in the course of this. These are trauma. These are endless traumatic situations that these people are being subjected to. And the government are there, I mean, keeps, I mean, promising that, I mean, someday these guys will be, will be rescued. The rescue of these people can't be endless. It can't be endless. So if it's their kids, I mean, when they know how much they do. Even while their kids or their relations are being kidnapped, they know how much they are being paid to get them, I mean, released. So what is the take? It's a very sad situation. It's a very, and you know what? Finally, on my final note, what if care is not taken? What goes around will come around. And what am I saying is that, one of the relations of, few of the relations of these people might in turn even be a thorn, to the neck of this, our society. Because once they have lost hope in government, they have lost the trust. Some of them, after all, my sisters have been kidnapped. So why not let me just join them? They cannot beat them, and they now become a threat. We have seen some people that just because of, little case, they are being imprisoned unjustifiably, and when they come out of the prison, they become a threat. So, I mean, it's just side. It has a dual motivated, faces, to it. So, I implore the government to stand up. Enough is enough of promises. Let's get these guys released. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Nwaneri, you heard him. He seems to agree with you that there is a lack of political.
Yes, he's pained, he's passionate. But I'm not going to be very positive. Sorry, I'm a teacher. I look at people and I tell them as I see it. I understand the passion, I understand the pain. But you see, my question here is, when I was invited to talk here, there's a proverb that came to my mind. Sorry, now I'm going to revert to Igbo. That means that if you don't know where rain beats you, the rain will beat you 2 times. So I've always been in policy. I've always been in development. And then even my relatives, I remember even when I was in school in America, everybody's looking at me that, Ndidi, waiting, what's with you and society? Why won't you go arrest and watch film like everybody else? What is it with this social policy matter? We must repair society, democracy. No, they're not doing it well. Why are they cheating this one? Did this one have, is there a hospital for, up and down? It is my passion. It is what I do. But the difference between me and everybody else is that, well, me and most people, it would be arrogant to say me and everybody else, is that I recognize that it is not, the larger and more complex the organization, the longer the lag time between cause and effect. So let me give you an example. If you go to a shoemaker shop where there are 5 workers, you come to work in the morning. Oga said that it is immediately implemented. But imagine if you went to a place like Mobile, complex organization, a decision by the board, it takes a long time to trigger down, right? Before the drivers begin to feel it or the secretaries begin to feel it. A complex society like Nigeria, there's also a lag time between bad behavior and the effect because of the complexity of the society. If you do something today to the populace, you might think you've gotten away with it. You might think that there's no effect, but eventually, the day it comes up to bite you, the day the effect of it finally shows up, it will show up like a monster because the complexity of the society means that that thing you did, when it starts seeping into different, it will go in different directions, like venom, when you drop it inside water. The point I'm trying to make here is that we can all get upset. But when did this rain start beating us? What did we do when the rain started to beat us? There was a time, I think I was still in school then, I heard that somebody had come into Kaduna State and killed people. It's only in Nigeria that we don't realize that this whole headsman business is about global warming and the contraction of the availability of grass, of cows to eat. We don't discuss global warming in Nigeria because, it affects everybody, but not us. But I digress. Now, what I heard was that the governor of a particular state sent a delegation to the people that came to the state and killed somebody and said that he has sent people to beg them. At that point, I wanted to send him dictionary definition of sovereignty, what it means to be a sovereign nation. Can I saunter into Mexico and go and say somebody offended me, then saunter out? Then the Mexican government will send delegation to come and beg. Is it not extradite? They will be extraditing me. One of the things I want to say to Nigerians in general and the government in particular, make up your mind. Are you running a modern state or not? If we were running a modern state, we will have population figures. If we were running a modern state, we will not be, I agree with him in that dimension. We will not be negotiating with people that break the law. Kidnapping has become a business and a cash crop, and we're all implicated. So I understand the pain. That's why I started with the proverb. If you do not know where rain beats you, it will beat you 2 times. So the question I want to ask the last gentleman that spoke, 20 years ago, when all of this was fermenting, what did you think was going to happen? As I said earlier, so what are we planting today that is going to explode in our faces in 10 years' time? That is what I want to ask Nigerians.
We will take another call. I see that there's someone else on the line. Our guest is Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri. Yes, please go ahead. Yeah. Your name, your location.
Dr. Abati, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
From here. Good afternoon. And I agree with Madam. Good afternoon, Madam. Number one, on May 29, 2015, Major General Muhammad Buhari retired, was sworn in, and he made the comment that the war against terrorism would not have been won until Chibok Girls were brought back. So 6 years down the line now, we have not gotten these girls, meaning that the war is still on. And clearly, you all will agree with me that the war has even gotten escalated beyond imagination of anybody. Disappointingly, a former Major General who fought during the Civil War, he was in the military, rose to the position of head of state, ordinarily understands the power of the military. But unfortunately, under his own watch, we have seen Nigeria degenerate to this hopeless situation. And for me, I don't want to argue much, but I like to hit the bullseye without caring about whether somebody will talk of sentiment or whatever. So you spoke about population. The problem of Nigeria can never get resolved. There are ways which we can solve our problem, but people will never allow it. Some people will never allow it. So when you hear people talk about, self-determination, they know what they are talking about. For instance, you mentioned population. Why can't we just have the correct population figure in Nigeria? If you want, you know yourself that population is part of the condition for revenue allocation. How many states do you have in the north? And these people are deliberately doing these things. They are making the solution difficult. I said that you don't want to make peaceful, you don't want to make progress easily, then what do you care? What happened to the schools built by the former government in the north? There's Materi school. 6 years ago, have you seen anybody in that school, attend that school? So there's a deliberate effort by these same people to make sure that the people remain that way. And these bandits, people we call bandits, they are not foreigners, they are Nigerians. If they were foreigners, how did Gumi get to know them? Who are the people paid money by Zamfara government, Katsina government? Are they foreigners as well? So let's stop deceiving ourselves. We are not one in this country. Unity is just about faith. It's fake unity with progress. And somebody will tell you, unity of Nigeria is not negotiable. But I think that's a fraudulent statement. See, if you want to get forward, let us sit down as a people, determine things, and tell ourselves the brutal truth. You said you want to be brutally honest. Let's tell ourselves the honest truth. Nothing is going to get better until you do either state police, you give state power to do the security of the people. We are just going everywhere. Yesterday in Ekiti, a traditional ruler, they got into his place.
I can't hear him.
This is Nigeria. A traditional ruler yesterday in Ekiti was kidnapping his own house. Traditional ruler. What are we talking about? See, we are getting worse by the day. The truth is that let us address our differences. Let us know whether we can stay together peacefully. Otherwise, let us go apart peacefully. That is the truth. We can't continue this way. This is 20 something years of democracy, and we are going backwards every day. Look at the inflation. Look at everything about Nigeria. Human indicator is going negative every day. So what are we talking about? We are not.
Okay, Dr. Nwaneri, over to you. I'm sure you got his drift.
Over to me.
Well, do you have any comment on some of the
what
things?
What he's saying is correct. There's something I'd like to add to this, When, sometimes sometimes it's beneficial not to see certain things, right? Because when you see them, it just traumatizes you. So I'd like to ask a question. You see all this one that we're saying that, there's a deliberate attempt not to educate children. I agree wholeheartedly. Actually, I did my undergraduate in Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. And one day I'm walking down the road and it just occurred to me that for education to be such an issue in northern Nigeria, it means that there's a ruling class that really doesn't want education to happen. Now, that was confirmed when I was working in education policy. I did a strategy session for the mass literacy group. I heard this story about how mass literacy agency had gone to a particular governor of some state. And, they did their pitch, we need to, mass literacy, we're going to do this and that. The only question that the governor in question asked the man, if we educate everybody, who are we going to govern? So to him, governing or governance was synonymous with keeping people illiterate and as much as possible ignorant. I'd like to tell another story. So recently, I hadn't been in Lagos for a few months. As a matter of fact, I traveled something like immediately after the NSAS protest. So I come back so I'm in Lagos and there's the toll gate. Yeah, the Lekki, so they don't take money anymore at the Lekki toll gate. And so this is still a very touchy issue in Nigeria, so I'm not going into the politics of it. But as a social policy person, I now ask the question that, they haven't collected money from this gate since October. So, and Lagos has not fallen apart. But you see, the irresponsibility of the citizenry is that at this point, people should get up and say, if Lagos can still function in the last how many months, and this money has not been collected, please, someone should come and explain to us with diagrams, as they used to say in our biology classes, explain with diagrams how the money has been doing all these years. Nobody is asking that question. So see, when Nigerians get hot and bothered, as far as I'm concerned, okay, go ahead and break. But when rubber hits the road, there are certain questions that we should be asking. And we don't bother to ask those questions. And the gentleman that spoke last said, well, let us go our separate ways. I'd like to tell him it's another story to end. I'm from a place called Ehime Mbano local government area. With due respect to Ehime Mbano people in Imo State, that's where my father comes from. My mother is from Delta State. If you are going to Ehime Mbano, you had better know where you are going because it's not on the side of the road. The local government area, many years ago, I was very young because my father used to haul us from Lagos to the village for every long holiday. We were not the London summer branch of society. We went to our village. When I was very, very young, one day it just occurred to me that the local government chairman of my local government area, any local government chairman that they elected, got the position, I think it was during the military regime, got so rich, became so rich and wore the most expensive wrappers. Meanwhile, this local government person sometimes they were male, sometimes they were female. Of course, they were from the community. So it's very easy to say balkanize Nigeria, cut Nigeria into pieces. Please, what are we going to do about our locally corrupt people? Someone should please explain to me. Or the sheer irresponsibility of every local government area. You go there, it looks like a shed. And you see people standing around as if their crankshafts are broken. They're sitting around there, it's like a welfare system. It happens in every local government area. If you go to these schools in 2021, the schools are pathetic. When I worked in education policy, I realized that the money of education in Nigeria, they probably steal 80% of it. So I don't have any patience for cut the country into pieces. I don't have any patience for it. It is this outsourcing of responsibility. My local government is a disaster. It is because of Asoro. Really? Interesting. It is irresponsible for you to say that even if the government is at the federal level, people are being dysfunctional. I have not seen a place, maybe it exists of the 700 and something local government areas, but I have never seen a community that sat down, tied their wrapper, as we say in Nigeria, and said that, you know what, we're going to fix this place. All they want to do is cut it up. All the states that they've cut up, the second state that they cut out of the original states, did they fare better? Or is it that people now decided that, well, if the pool is smaller, my relative will probably become the governor, which is exactly what has happened. When are we going to start telling ourselves the truth as Nigerians? I hate it when I go to policy sessions and people are speaking big grammar. The policy environment and the international wanting. We're not talking about our cousins, brothers, friends, and relatives that are common thieves. We do not hold that conversation. We don't even talk about the people that go and line up in front of people that they are aware has robbed their community blind with a bowl, trying to beg for money, beg for contracts. We don't have that conversation. So I'm sorry, I don't take Nigerians seriously. I don't. Because if we're really committed to fixing our society, we know exactly what to do. Last thing I'm going to mention, look at Lekki Phase 1, highest concentration of educated Africans. I make proud to say. Look at the streets. You will see a house that you cannot even afford to pay the rent. The gutter in front of it is so dirty, you can't even jog past it. Is this cement slab that you cannot buy when you have all the equipment that you bought from all over the world? What is wrong with us as a people? Okay, are those the people that you want to share Nigeria and give? Someone that can't fix the gutter in his house, despite all the money he has? How much does it want to cost to do slabs and cover your gutter, even if the government does not do it? You drive past what is functionally a pigsty to enter somebody's house, and then everybody is pointing hands at us so wrong. I don't have any patience for that kind of thing. It's about time we sat down, looked ourselves in the eyes, and told ourselves the truth, and decide whether or not we're running a modern society. I'm going to get off my podium now. Reuben, you are the one that invited me.
Oh, yes. Well, I think on this note, all we can just do is to thank you very much for taking time out to join us on this program. I've been enjoying myself, and I'm sure that our listeners are also very excited. And how you manage to switch from Igbo to English to Yoruba, that's quite impressive.
We are all Nigerians, and I don't have any patience for pretense. I'm sorry. It is who I am, and yeah. I'm sure most people understood me.
Yes, great, really great. And I also want to thank many of our listeners and those who managed to call in and those who reach out to us on Zoom, Twitter, and Facebook. Remember, the conversation does not end here. You can reach out to me on my social media account at Abati1990, both on Instagram and Twitter, and also at City1051 on all social media platforms. For those of you who tuned in late, no need to worry. You can visit the City 1051 YouTube page at City 1051 to watch the entire show. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And don't forget also to tune in next week at 12 o'clock for another exciting edition of City Talks. My name is Reuben Abati. The show was produced by Adedoja Allen, Abiodun Odunton, Ayodamola Oludara, Oluwaseun Adetitun, and Olanrewaju Onikwede Jr. Have a great weekend.
City Talks with Reuben Abati.